The Ford Mustang may very well end up being the last sports car with a naturally aspirated V8 engine. Over the past few years, we have seen V8 powered sports cars dropping like flies. It was about a decade ago that BMW killed off the V8 option in the 3 Series. Mercedes-AMG is now downsizing to turbo hybrid powertrains in both the E63 and C63. And even the mighty Ferrari now has a V6 in the 296, which is the car that was meant to carry on the lineage of the mid-engine V8 Ferrari supercar. And in just the past 6 months, we have seen the discontinuation of the Chevy Camaro and the V8 versions of the Dodge Charger and Challenger, with the Charger and Challenger now being replaced by both a turbo 6-cylinder version and an EV version, which is an odd choice, but that is a video for another day. But Ford, who has just rolled out the 6th generation of their Mustang, seems more committed to the V8 than ever before. And let's be specific about the engine we're talking about here. It is Ford's Coyote engine, which is a 5-liter, naturally aspirated, 24-valve, dual overhead cam V8. Ford first rolled this engine out for the 2011 model year, and it was a major improvement over the outgoing 4.6-liter V8. And since then, Ford has only continued to refine this engine, with the biggest change being the addition of direct injection in 2018, but there's also been a lot of other tweaks that have helped bump its horsepower up from the original 410 in 2011 to now 500 horsepower in the latest top version of the Mustang Dark Horse. Now, as amazing as that engine is, there have been even more impressive engines that have been killed off recently. So we're going to talk about some of the reasons why Ford is able to be so committed to keeping this V8 engine in the Mustang. The first reason I'll touch on is just that Ford has been quick to pivot with the Mustang. They were the first out of the big 3 muscle car manufacturers to offer a downsized turbo engine in their car. The EcoBoost engine was introduced in 2015, and while I know that's not the engine that you're going to typically think of when you think Mustang, it has helped Ford sell a heck of a lot more cars. That's because that EcoBoost engine is both more efficient and more affordable, and there's a lot of people that just resonate with the Mustang brand and they're willing to compromise. And one point just for the EcoBoost, that brand does have a lot of recognition, and the same can't be said for Chevy when they decided to put the EcoTech into the Camaro. Another way in which Ford has pivoted with the Mustang was by introducing an EV. Now, I know a lot of the hardcore car enthusiasts are going to cringe at the idea of the Mustang Mach-E even being called a Mustang, but I think it was a really smart move for Ford. It allowed Ford to cash in on the Mustang name without having to actually alter the product that built that name recognition in the first place. And in general, Ford was the first out of the big 3 American car manufacturers to start making a concerted push towards EVs, which isn't saying a lot because they were all pretty late to the game. But by having that early push, it allows Ford to continue to dedicate resources to vehicles like the Mustang, opposed to having to pull those resources and kind of have to make a mad dash to catch up on the EV front. Another point that we'll touch on is just the cachet of the Mustang brand itself. The Mustang brand carries a lot of weight. I know a lot of us car enthusiasts, we get so caught up in the minutia, in all of these little details between different cars and different engines, that we forget that to most people, the Mustang is probably the most recognizable sports car. And having a product like this is, yes, good for selling that one individual car, but it's also good for Ford as an entire brand. Having a product that you have basically been building in the same format since the late 1960s really goes a long way. Another point that we'll touch on is just the regulatory environment that Ford operates in. The Mustang is primarily intended for the American market. Some of the other cars that we were talking about earlier, like the offerings from BMW or Mercedes-AMG, are also sold in the European market. Europe has much stricter emissions and fuel economy standards than the US, so cars that are going to be sold in large volumes there have to comply with those standards. opposed to the Mustang, which is primarily sold in the US. And the last reason that we'll touch on for why Ford is able to be so committed to the V8 engine is the leadership team at Ford. Up until this point, a lot of the things that I've been touching on have just been laying out the runway for why Ford is able to be so committed to the V8. But there also needs to be the willpower and the determination at Ford to make that decision and recognize this opportunity. And the one person on Ford's leadership team that we can really point to is the CEO, Jim Farley. Jim Farley is a certified car guy. He's a club racer. If you listen to some of his interviews that are in more of a enthusiast-oriented format, you can tell that he really does know what he's talking about. A lot of these big car company CEOs, they treat the car business as just that, a business. Now, I'm not saying that Jim Farley doesn't care about the business side and making sure that Ford is profitable, but he is in a unique position to understand what really resonates with enthusiasts. Now, to be clear, Ford isn't keeping the V8 around out of the kindness of their hearts, but they do recognize the opportunity that they have and are making the absolute most of it. So to zoom back out a little bit, does all of this mean that Ford is going to be keeping the V8 engine around forever? Probably not. The Coyote engine will most likely be the last V8 that Ford ever develops. There is still some room on the table for them to continue improving this engine, but it's highly unlikely that they will ever go out of their way to develop a brand new V8 just because the R&D costs are so incredibly high in a market that is moving very quickly towards electric vehicles. That being said, I could see the Coyote V8 living on at least until the early 2030s, and then after that, we'll just have to wait and see. But to take some words directly out of Jim Farley's mouth, we have EcoBoost, we have the Dark Horse now, and we are going to continue to invest. And if we're the only ones on the planet making a V8 affordable sports car for everyone in the world, so be it.